Louis Vuitton and Chanel will hate me if I tell you this, revealing the secret behind big brand. Let's go!
And after looking into a bit, I understand this is a top grain cowhide. There is a corrective finish on top, that's why we call it top grain. That's why I call it mediocre, because you can make this leather using most of the cowhides available in the market.
You just want the same quality, same material, you can just buy from us. Because for our bags, we use exactly the same material, same leather, same hardware, same edge oil. The only difference is, one, we don't have the logo, so we don't have to pay so much.
You're not ready for this tea. What if I told you that your $38,000 Birkin bag might have been made in the same Chinese factory as a $400 knockoff, with the exact same leather, hardware, and stitching? That Louis Vuitton and Chanel don't want you to know that you're paying for a story, not a product, and that your favorite celebrities might be in on the scam, raking in millions to convince you it's all worth it. This isn't just about handbags. It's about a luxury illusion built on exclusivity, status, and straight-up deception. So let's rip the designer label off this industry and expose what's really underneath. Luxury isn't just a product. It's a performance, a promise, a carefully curated illusion of power, exclusivity, and control. And in today's age of mass production and digital chaos, it's one of the last few fantasies we're still willing to believe in. But what exactly are we buying when we chase luxury? Is it the leather, the logo, the craftsmanship, or something far more intoxicating? Let's begin with a whisper. Hermes silences time. That's not just a slogan. That's a statement of divine ambition. In a world obsessed with speed, trends, and the next big thing, Hermes doesn't follow time. It erases it. While fast fashion races to imitate, luxury saunters. It's still, eternal, untouchable, and that's exactly the point. Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, these aren't just brands. They're temples. And what they sell isn't fabric, leather, or metal. It's reverence. It's longing. It's desire wrapped in exclusivity. Because in the cathedral of consumerism, nothing is holier than the unattainable. Let's talk about the myth of timelessness. True luxury brands don't beg for your attention. They withhold. They exist outside of urgency. A new iPhone needs a keynote and countdown clock. A new Birkin? It arrives in silence, if it arrives at all. There's no launch date, no online drop, no flashy ad campaign. The Birkin doesn't chase you. You chase it. And it didn't happen by accident. See, Hermes knew exactly what they were doing when they made the Birkin more than a bag. They made it a gatekeeper, a cultural cipher, something that says, without a word, I've arrived. But here's the twist. You can't just buy a Birkin. You have to be chosen for it. It's one of the only items in the world where money isn't enough. You need status, a relationship, a history. You need to be seen as worthy. This isn't commerce. This is theater. The Birkin didn't get famous because it was flaunted. It got famous because it was withheld. Carried by quiet billionaires and discreet heiresses, not influencers or paparazzi bait. Its power was its mystery. And once celebrities started whispering about it, Oprah, Victoria Beckham, Kim Kardashian, the myth solidified. This wasn't just a purse. This was a ticket to another world. Let's zoom out. Louis Vuitton, the other titan of quiet luxury, has mastered the art of selective availability. The monogram, once synonymous with flash, has been repackaged as heritage. But underneath the surface, it's the same playbook. Rarity, waitlists, controlled distribution. Price hikes not based on material cost, but on narrative value. The seduction of luxury works like this. The less accessible it is, the more we want it. Psychology 101. Scarcity breeds obsession. We're told these items are investments, heirlooms, statements of taste, but in truth, they're monuments to identity. We don't buy the thing. We buy what the thing says about us. We buy the fantasy of being better, belonging to an elite class that doesn't need to try. Even the stores are part of the illusion. Ever walked into an Hermes boutique? It's not a store, it's a stage. The lighting is soft. The walls are minimal. The air smells expensive. You don't browse. You wait. And maybe, if you're lucky, someone shows you a bag. Not the bag you want. It's all part of the dance. This is how luxury keeps its grip on us. Not by being useful, not by being needed, but by being just out of reach. By creating rituals, the appointment-only shopping, the custom orders, the personal stylists, the annual client book where loyal customers are gifted first dibs on limited pieces because they've proven themselves. And make no mistake, every gesture is a reminder that this world isn't for everyone. And that's what makes it desirable. But let's be real. Much of this is fiction. Carefully constructed, multi-million-dollar branding designed to mask the truth. These are still corporations, and they still need to sell. The exclusivity? It's strategic. The scarcity? Sometimes artificial. The wait list for the Birkin? A marketing tool in itself. Supply is controlled not just to protect the brand, but to manipulate the perception of value. Still, the spell holds. Because deep down, luxury satisfies a very primal need, the desire to be seen. In a world where everything is disposable, luxury tells us we are not. That we are rare. That we are timeless. And so we play along. We save. We scheme. We sacrifice for a name stitched onto leather or embossed in gold. Because to own a piece of that fantasy, even if it's just a scarf, a belt, a wallet, feels like stepping into a world where time doesn't touch us. Hermes silences time, but maybe it also silences reality. So the next time you see someone holding a Birkin, don't ask what it cost. Ask what it meant. Let's cut the fantasy and talk about what you're really holding when you carry a $38,000 Hermes Birkin or a $12,000 Louis Vuitton Capucines. Because behind the prestige, behind the logo, and behind that smug, knowing smirk you flash when someone compliments your bag, is cowhide. Not unicorn leather. Not the tears of Parisian angels. Just top-grain cowhide. The same material used in couches, car seats, and yes, even budget handbags sold at department stores for under $300. Now, top grain sounds luxurious, doesn't it? It has that industry polish that makes you think you're getting the creme de la creme. But here's the dirty secret. Top grain is standard. It's not full grain. It's not the highest quality. It's sanded down to remove imperfections, often corrected with pigment and mass-produced. It's durable, sure, but luxury? That's marketing. And once you realize that, the entire illusion begins to crack. Because if the materials are basic and the labor isn't always what you think it is, and the stitching is done in factories that also produce for third-tier brands, then what exactly are you paying for? This is where the real tea starts spilling. Thanks to a wave of TikTok creators, former factory workers, and leather artisans turned whistleblowers, we now have a rare peek behind the curtain. And what they're revealing is nothing short of explosive. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are video walkthroughs, side-by-side comparisons, insider photos, and in some cases, factory receipts. Take Xiaojia, a former quality control inspector from Shenzhen who now posts anonymously on Douyin, China's version of TikTok. She spent 5 years inspecting bags for a major contractor that quietly supplies parts, not just to dupe brands, but directly to luxury maisons in Europe. In one of her most viral videos, she calmly holds up 2 bags. One has an Hermes logo. One doesn't. Same calfskin leather. Same stitching pattern. Same hand-painted edges. One retails for over $30,000. The other? $380. The only difference? Branding. Another creator, known as a Bag Snob Factory, went viral after uploading a video titled POV. You realize your $12,000 LV is made in the same room as my $400 dupe. He doesn't just speculate. He shows side-by-side footage of both bags being stitched, dyed, and finished using the exact same tools by the same workers in Guangdong province. The punchline? The dupe was made after hours with leftover materials by the same hands that assemble your luxury purse. It's not about counterfeits anymore. We're not talking about back-alley knockoffs with crooked logos and bad zippers. We're talking about identical products, down to the dye lot, the hardware finish, and the grain alignment, made in the same facilities, sometimes even by the same people. And this isn't new. What's changed is the access. 20 years ago, these whispers never left the factory floor. Today, they're uploaded in 4K with subtitles and timestamps. Even established artisan accounts in Europe are joining in. One leatherworker from Florence, who goes by at @_Travera, shocked her followers when she explained that many made-in-Italy tags are legally allowed even if up to 70% of the production was completed in China or Eastern Europe, as long as the finishing touches happen in Italy. So that handmade in Paris bag? It may have been touched up in Paris, but 90% of it was built elsewhere. And it gets deeper. Luxury houses have been outsourcing manufacturing for years, but they keep it under a tight shroud of secrecy. Subcontractors aren't allowed to speak. Contracts come with severe penalties. And yet, the truth leaks out, because the margin is just too good. Let's do the math. A typical high-end bag made from top-grain leather costs roughly $200 to $300 in raw materials. Labor, including hand-stitching and finishing, adds another $100 to $400, depending on location and complexity. Add packaging, shipping, and branding, and you're still hovering under $1,400 in production cost. And yet these bags are sold for $12,000, $18,000, even $50,000 in rare cases. That's a markup of over 1,000%. Not for quality, not for craftsmanship, but for perception, because perception is the product. And when that perception is pierced, when someone holds up your $40,000 Birkin next to a $500 unbranded twin and points out that they are identical in every technical sense, the luxury spell starts to collapse. But the industry counts on you not looking that closely. They count on brand loyalty, on celebrity endorsements, on red carpet visibility. Because if the veil ever drops, if people really begin to understand that the difference between luxury and everyday is often just a stamp, then the entire house of cards starts shaking. And the biggest joke, some of those $300 dupes made in replica factories are actually better finished than the originals. Why? Because they're not rushed to meet demand. They're made slowly, deliberately, with the goal of deception. And that deception reveals a larger truth. When quality becomes indistinguishable, branding becomes the only illusion left to sell. So here's the uncomfortable question luxury brands don't want you to ask. If the craftsmanship is the same, the material is the same, and the bag is the same, except for the logo, then what exactly are you paying for? Status? Fantasy? Manipulation? Because at this point, it's definitely not the bag. The luxury world runs on secrets. It thrives in shadows, whispering in hushed tones about ateliers in Paris, family-run workshops in Florence, and hand-stitched elegance passed down through generations. But while the glossy ads say France, the real story, it's playing out across an ocean, in warehouses and factories scattered across mainland China and Hong Kong. And TikTok creators are blowing the lid off a billion-dollar illusion. Let's talk about the quiet, calculated role China plays in the luxury game. A role the industry has gone to extreme lengths to downplay, even deny. Because once the truth gets out, the margins start to look criminal. We're talking about bags that cost $1,400 to make, material, labor, and packaging included, being sold for $38,000 in boutiques just because they carry a logo. Same calfskin leather, same edge painting, same hand stitching. The only thing missing? A name. And that name is worth more than gold. But the secret isn't staying buried anymore. Because over the last year, Chinese TikTok, yes, Douyin, the original platform, has become ground zero for a wave of factory workers, leather experts, and anonymous insiders lifting the curtain on the world's most coveted handbags. Creators like @FactoryBigSis have amassed millions of views by showing exactly how a $400 dupe is assembled side by side with what she openly admits is a real luxury handbag made in the same workshop just hours earlier. In one video, she holds up two nearly identical bags, one destined for a French label's flagship in Tokyo, and one unbranded, sold discreetly online. The shocking part? Same hardware, same thread, same grain match caskin, even the same craftsman. She looks straight into the camera and says, "Only difference? This one gets a stamp. This one doesn't. And that stamp? That's the $36,600 difference." Other creators, like Real Bag Truth, a former supervisor at a Hong Kong-based subcontractor, are going even further. In one now viral clip, he walks viewers through the full production process inside a factory that produces for 2 European luxury houses you absolutely know. He points to boxes of materials labeled with brand initials. Full-grain leather hides imported from France. Zippers from Italy. Gold-plated clasps sourced from Japan. But the labor? The cutting, the stitching, the polishing? All done on Chinese soil. Let that sink in. The made in France or Fabrique in Italy tag that you proudly show off on your $25,000 bag. It's often sewn on last, after the product's been 80 to 90% completed overseas. It's a legal loophole, and luxury brands use it masterfully. Because under European trade law, if the final substantial transformation happens in France or Italy, the brand can legally claim it as their place of origin, which means slap on a tag, tighten a buckle, steam the leather, and voila, it's French. But these Chinese TikTok creators aren't just talking. They're showing receipts. One video zooms in on a shipping manifest from Shenzhen. Crates of pre-assembled handbags listed as semi-finished leather goods, shipped to France for final touches. Another shows identical dye lots used in both branded and unbranded bags. Proof that the same tanning facilities are supplying both markets. The kicker? Some of these dupes are actually overbuilt because they're not mass-produced. They're handcrafted by the same experts, often on the same machines, but without the brand's production quotas and time constraints. The result? A bag that looks, feels, and even smells like the real thing. Because in every meaningful way, it is. So why the price gap? Because luxury isn't about quality anymore. It's about perception. And that perception is protected by gatekeeping, by secrecy, by the illusion that what you're buying is rare, artisanal, and European. But when a teenager in Guangzhou can show you a $500 bag made on the same line as a $38,000 Birkin lookalike, that illusion starts to fracture. And the industry is terrified. Luxury houses have started issuing quiet takedowns. Videos mysteriously vanish. Accounts get flagged, but the content keeps resurfacing because the truth has legs. And consumers, especially Gen Z, are watching with eyes wide open. They're asking the questions brands hoped they'd never think to ask. Why am I paying $30,000 for something that costs $1,400 to make? Is a logo worth a down payment on a house? And if the only real difference is a brand name, am I the one being played? Because here's the most bitter pill of all. These Chinese factories, they've always been here. They've always done the work. Luxury brands have always relied on them to keep costs low while charging sky-high prices. But now, thanks to TikTok, they're finally being seen, not as knockoff artists, but as the true hands behind the fantasy. And the question hanging in the air? What happens when the workers stop being silent and the consumers start getting smart? Because once you've seen the truth, that logo doesn't shine quite the same. Let's talk about the biggest lie luxury fashion ever told and how your favorite celebrities are in on it. Because that $40,000 Birkin you saw Kim Kardashian casually tossing onto a couch in a TikTok, that's not just a bag, it's a commercial, a staged, curated, high-stakes ad. And she's not just a fan, she's the middleman between the brand and your wallet. Here's the truth the luxury industry doesn't want you to hear. Celebrities aren't organically in love with these brands. They're strategic assets, paid, gifted, and incentivized to make you believe that exclusivity equals worth. And they do it flawlessly, because when Cardi B posts an unboxing of her 27th Hermes bag, when Victoria Beckham steps out in a coat from a capsule collection that isn't available to the public, when Rihanna is seen holding a custom Louis Vuitton Speedy that doesn't exist in stores, that's not accidental. That's psychological warfare. And it's working. You think you're buying into luxury? No. You're buying into a fantasy carefully constructed by millionaires who would never spend their own money on a bag they could get for free, or even better, get paid to carry. Let's break it down. Kim Kardashian is one of the most visible collectors of Hermes Birkins on the planet. But you think she waited on a list? You think she begged her sales associate for a Himalayan croc, or took a year to build purchase history? Absolutely not. That's for the peasants. Kim didn't just get those bags. She made them trend. And Hermes knows it. So instead of turning her away, they strategically feed her exclusive pieces, sometimes even custom one-offs, because they know that when Kim posts, sales spike. She's not a customer. She's a billboard. Same with Cardi B. Let's be real. When Cardi's team flooded Instagram with photos of her color-coordinated Birkin wall, it wasn't about love for the craft. It was about flexing a lifestyle the rest of us can't touch. It creates the illusion that if Cardi, who came from the bottom, can afford 30 Birkins, then the bag must mean you made it. She turns luxury into aspiration. But here's the catch. Cardi's not paying resale prices. She's getting exclusives that you can't buy. At least, not unless you're willing to cough up 6 figures or have a verified blue check. And then there's Victoria Beckham, the queen of understated high-end branding. She's rarely seen without a carefully chosen, often unavailable bag from her private archives. What fans don't realize, many of those rare pieces are either custom commissions or early releases tied to whisper-quiet partnerships with heritage brands. When she steps out with a limited edition Hermes Kelly and matte white croc, that's not fashion, it's strategy. It drives buzz, fuels artificial scarcity, and positions her not just as a consumer, but as a gatekeeper to style. Even Rihanna, as beloved and authentic as she is, plays the game. When she showed up to Pharrell's debut Louis Vuitton show with that gigantic custom Speedy, fans screamed about how cool and effortless she looked. But make no mistake, that bag wasn't plucked off a shelf. It was a one-of-one prototype, designed to generate hype before the collection dropped. And the headlines did exactly what they were supposed to do. Signal that this was the next hit bag. But for who? Not you. Not unless you're an A-lister with direct access to the brand's top-tier gifting list. So now the question is, are these women really fans, or are they salespeople in stilettos? Because when a celebrity flaunts something you can't buy, it doesn't just create desire. It creates obsession. It makes you chase. It drives you to the boutique. And even when you're told, sorry, we're sold out, the scarcity just makes you want more. It's a psychological trap, and they all know it. You think the brands don't calculate this? You think Louis Vuitton accidentally gave Rihanna a prototype right before launching Pharrell's first major campaign? You think Hermes just let it slide when Cardi posted 30 Birkins in a rainbow grid? You think Kim Kardashian just loves exotic skins so much she happened to own every color of the Himalayan? Please, this is luxury's most brilliant hustle. Weaponize celebrity worship to manufacture exclusivity. Feed the fantasy. Let the rich sell the dream to the poor. And cash in on every dollar in between. Because at the end of the day, they don't need you to buy the exact same bag. They just need you to want the lifestyle. To buy a fragrance, a wallet, a keychain, to start somewhere. Because once they have your desire, they own your wallet. And celebrities? They're not victims of this machine. They're co-architects. So the next time you see your favorite star casually flaunting a bag you could never afford, ask yourself, is that admiration you're feeling or manipulation? Because they're not just showing off their fashion. They're selling you a dream they got paid to wear. The biggest scam in luxury fashion isn't the price tag. It's the story behind it. The myth, the illusion, the narrative carefully crafted by billion-dollar corporations like LVMH and Hermes to make you believe that scarcity equals value and denial equals desire. But here's the gag. It's not organic. It's not accidental. It's a choreographed illusion of exclusivity, and you were never meant to be on the inside. Let's start with LVMH, the empire behind Louis Vuitton, Dior, Fendi, Celine, and more. With Bernard Arnault, one of the richest men on earth, at the helm, LVMH doesn't just sell bags and perfume. It sells aspiration, and it does it by controlling access like a Velvet Rope nightclub in 2006. You don't just walk in and buy what you want. You're screened. You're profiled. You're judged. That $3,200 monogrammed Louis Vuitton bag you saw online? Good luck. It might be available, but not to you. It's a strategy called manufactured scarcity, and luxury brands use it like a weapon. Instead of flooding the market with inventory, they drip-feed select pieces in ultra-limited quantities, creating wait lists, client exclusives, and random boutique drops that keep consumers in a constant state of hunger. You're not shopping, you're auditioning. And if you think that's bad, wait until you try to get a Birkin. Because Hermes takes it to another level entirely. They don't just gatekeep the bag, they gatekeep the fantasy. The iconic Birkin is never on display. There's no online link, no public catalog. You walk into the boutique and ask for one. Prepare for the sales associate to look you up and down like you just farted in church. Why? Because Birkins are never sold. They're offered. Offered only to select clients who've built up purchase history, meaning you've already spent thousands on scarves, belts, shoes, and other non-essential nonsense just to qualify for the chance to buy the Holy Grail. And even then, you don't choose the color or size. They choose for you. You get what they offer. No complaints. That's not a customer experience. That's psychological control. But here's the part that makes it genius and sinister. This fake scarcity creates a feedback loop. The harder something is to get, the more people want it. The more people want it, the more they talk about it. The more they talk about it, the more valuable it seems. Suddenly, the bag isn't about craftsmanship. It's about status. And once status enters the chat, logic goes out the window. What LVMH and Hermes have mastered is turning exclusion into marketing. They make you feel like you're not good enough to shop with them, and you eat it up. They create whisper-only wait lists that don't exist on paper, private appointments that you can't Google, personalized shopping rooms behind closed doors. And then they leak just enough information on purpose so the rest of us feel left out. That feeling? That's the hook. Because if you're left out, you want in. If you want in, you'll pay. And once you pay, you're owned. You're not a buyer anymore. You're a believer. And the cycle continues. Because here's the truth. Hermes could flood the market with Birkins tomorrow if they wanted to. The bags are being made in volume. The demand is there. But they don't want supply to match demand. That kills the fantasy. So instead, they slow release product, push you to spend more to unlock access, and leave you guessing about your own worth. And somehow, it works. And LVMH? They're no better. Louis Vuitton pretends their products are exclusive, but they're mass-produced across multiple continents. The brand then rotates stock between boutiques like a shell game, creating the illusion that something is sold out when it's really sitting in the back room in Milan or Tokyo. Dior drops micro batches of bags each season, labels them limited edition, and watches the resale market explode. FOMO is the business model. Even the celebrity endorsements are controlled. You ever wonder why you never see certain bags on regular influencers? It's because they're pre-reserved for VIP clients, stylists, or industry insiders. Celebs don't buy them. They're offered first dibs behind closed doors. That way, by the time the rest of us even know the product exists, it's already sold out. Not because it was rare, but because it was pre-planned. This isn't fashion. It's psychological warfare wrapped in Italian leather. These brands don't sell products. They sell a narrative. A narrative where you're never quite good enough, never quite rich enough, never quite fashionable enough to be offered what you actually want. And when you finally get access, it's not about the item. It's about the validation. It's about feeling like you made it. But that's the con. Because behind the closed doors, behind the boutique exclusivity and the fake wait lists, these brands are just mass-market companies in silk gloves. And the illusion of exclusivity? That's the most expensive lie you'll ever buy into. So next time you're tempted to chase a bag, a drop, a color, or a name that everyone says is impossible to get, ask yourself this. Is it really rare? Or are they just making you beg so you'll pay double? Because in the luxury world, the only thing truly exclusive is the truth. Let's talk about the power shift luxury doesn't want you to notice, because for the first time in modern fashion history, Hermes has overtaken LVMH in value. And no, that's not a typo. The quietest, most exclusive brand in the game just snatched the crown from the loudest empire in luxury. And the industry is shook. For decades, LVMH was the godfather of high fashion. With over 75 brands under its umbrella, Louis Vuitton, Dior, Fendi, Celine, Loewe, Tiffany & Company, LVMH has operated like a fashion Amazon. Scale first, identity second. The formula? Flood the market, dominate social media, expand in China, launch drops, build hype, then repeat. But Hermes? They never played that game. While LVMH was building a luxury machine, Hermes was building a myth. And now, the myth is winning. In early 2024, Hermes briefly surpassed LVMH in market capitalization, making it the most valuable luxury brand in the world. Think about that. A company that sells a fraction of the volume of LVMH somehow became more valuable. Why? Because they did the one thing LVMH couldn't. They said no. No to mass production. No to celebrity saturation. No to chasing trends. And most importantly, no to you. See, LVMH built its fortune on visibility and volume. Louis Vuitton alone rakes in billions annually by producing bags at a breakneck pace. You can walk into almost any major city and find a Vuitton boutique with the same lineup of monogram goods, selfie walls, and sold-out signs that only exist to bait you into spending more. It's luxury on a loop, fast, global, and scalable. Hermes took the opposite approach. They produce just enough. They restrict access. They guard their artisans like national secrets. They don't beg celebrities to wear their bags. They let the celebrities come to them. And they don't release collections with the intent to go viral. They release them knowing most people will never touch them. And that's the secret. Exclusion is the brand. While LVMH courted influencers and hired Pharrell to helm Louis Vuitton menswear in a blockbuster spectacle, Hermes stayed silent and profitable. Their stock doesn't rise with every celebrity collab. It rises because investors believe in restraint, impermanence, in the power of not changing with the wind. Because when you see a Birkin, you don't think seasonal. You think timeless. When you see Louis Vuitton's latest drop, it's more likely to scream TikTok trend than heirloom. And that's where the real difference lies. Hermes didn't scale. They solidified. They tightened their grip on production, refused to outsource to cheaper factories, focused on hand-stitching, artisan workshops, and quality control that borders on obsessive. It's not just branding, it's discipline, and the market noticed. So now we're watching a quiet revolution unfold. The luxury giant that said more, faster, everywhere is being challenged by the house that said less, slower, nowhere. And in a post-pandemic world where wealth is getting quieter and taste is shifting from logos to legacy, Hermes is the new gold standard. Because it's not about who's trending. It's about who's trusted. LVMH may still rule in volume, but Hermes owns the throne in value. And that shift from flash to finesse, from noise to nuance, could reshape luxury as we know it. Because the new flex isn't showing off what you bought. It's showing that you had access to something they wouldn't even sell. There's a new class war happening in luxury fashion, and it's not between rich and poor. It's between those who still buy the dream and those who figured out how to get the quality without the con. Because while Hermes and LVMH are busy playing scarcity games, a new generation of consumers is quietly saying, keep the bag. I found a better one for half the price. Enter the direct-to-consumer disruptors. Brands like Pauline, Teddy Blake, Quiana, Strathberry, and Freja are flipping the script. No middlemen, no artificial scarcity, no $4,000 markup just because it came with a dust bag and a French accent. These DTC labels are offering full-grain leather, hand-stitched construction, and timeless silhouettes, all at a fraction of the price of a luxury logo bag. And the kicker? Most people can't even tell the difference. Because here's the truth luxury doesn't want you to know. High quality doesn't have to cost you rent. What you're paying for at Dior or Louis Vuitton isn't always the craftsmanship. It's the brand legacy, the marketing machine, and the psychological warfare of earning access. But now, TikTok is dismantling that illusion one video at a time. We're in the era of the TikTok truther. Influencers who aren't just unboxing products. They're exposing price gouging, comparing stitch work, and revealing which luxury brands are outsourcing to the same factories as so-called affordable ones. They're doing side-by-sides of Hermes versus Pauline and zooming in on edge painting, hardware plating, leather grain, and even thread tension. And guess what? The dupe often wins. These creators aren't selling knockoffs. They're selling clarity. They're showing you that a $500 bag can be just as luxurious, sometimes more, than a $5,000 one. They're reviewing bags made in Italy and Spain by generational artisans that don't have a famous name attached, but do have premium construction, ethical sourcing, and actual value. And the audience? Eating it up. Because what's more rebellious than walking past a Hermes store with a $300 bag that looks like a $30,000 one, and knowing you didn't have to beg for it? Direct-to-consumer brands are building real loyalty by treating customers like insiders, not peasants at the palace gates. No gatekeeping. No, spend $15,000 before we let you buy the good stuff. You want the bag? Add to cart. That's it. And that scares the hell out of legacy brands. Because this generation isn't just chasing flex, it's chasing facts. And when a TikTok truther breaks down how the same leather tannery in Tuscany supplies both an affordable indie brand and a household luxury name, that logo on your bag suddenly looks a lot less magical and a lot more like a $3,000 tax on insecurity. Luxury used to be about what was rare. Now, knowledge is the rarest thing of all. And the new wave of consumers aren't falling for the gatekeeping, the wait lists, or the fantasy. They're falling for transparency, for quality, for access without humiliation. So while the old guard is still selling the dream behind a velvet rope, the new school is saying, screw the rope. Here's the receipt. Because the new luxury isn't about labels. It's about knowing better and buying smarter. Let's strip the fantasy down to the studs. If the only thing that separates your $40,000 Birkin from a $400 dupe is a heat-stamped logo and an embossed invoice, what are you really buying? Because at that point, it's no longer about the leather, the stitching, or the craftsmanship. It's about status theater and whether or not you're willing to pay for the illusion of superiority. This is the question luxury doesn't want you to ask, because once you do, the whole empire starts to crack. We've been sold a myth that the more expensive something is, the more it's worth, not just in dollars, but in identity. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The luxury markup isn't a reflection of quality. It's a toll on your insecurity. It's the price of wanting to belong to a club that doesn't even respect you. Think about it. A $40,000 Birkin isn't just expensive. It's intentionally, aggressively inaccessible. You don't walk in and buy it. You audition for it. You spend thousands on other items first. You build a relationship with a sales associate. You prove your loyalty to the brand like a peasant begging for royal favor. All for what? A bag made in the same region, with the same leather, using the same hands that also produce bags selling for 1/100th of the price? That's not exclusivity. That's manipulation with a bow on top. And here's where the moral reckoning begins. Because once you realize you're paying for a fantasy, not a product, you also have to face what that fantasy is built on: exploitation, elitism, and emotional blackmail. You're not just buying a bag. You're buying into a system that rewards gatekeeping, punishes transparency, and weaponizes aspiration. Luxury houses have made fortunes off our silence. But Gen Z and younger millennials? They're done staying quiet. They're asking harder questions. Why are we loyal to brands that don't care if we go into debt? Why do we celebrate companies that treat their customers like liabilities until they're rich enough to matter? Why do we pretend it's taste when it's just access? The veil is lifting. Influencers are calling it out. Former insiders are leaking the receipts. DTC brands are proving you can have luxury without cruelty, elegance without exclusion. And consumers? They're starting to realize that if luxury means humiliating yourself for a handbag, maybe it was never that luxurious to begin with. Because in a world where a $400 bag can match or outshine a $40,000 one in every metric except brand recognition, the real value isn't in the bag. It's in the buyer's self-awareness. So what are you really paying for? Not leather, not labor, not even longevity. You're paying for a logo, for a story, for a feeling. And the gag is, it only works if you still believe in the lie. But more and more people are choosing something else. They're choosing freedom from the brand. They're choosing to be impressed by ethics, not hype. They're choosing to spend their money like it actually means something. Because in the end, luxury isn't about price, it's about power. And the real flex is knowing you don't need a label to feel worthy. So here we are, After all the unboxings, the whisper networks, the TikTok takedowns, the factory exposes, and the side-by-side stitch comparisons, we've reached a moment of uncomfortable clarity. Luxury isn't what we thought it was. It never was. And the brands? They know it. They've always known. That's why they've worked so hard to keep you dazzled, distracted, and desperate. Because once you pull back the curtain, once you see the strategy, the manipulation, the artificial scarcity, the psychological games, you realize you were never buying just a product. You were buying a feeling, a performance. You were paying to participate in a fantasy that was never meant to serve you, only to use you. But the fantasy is breaking. And in its place, a new luxury is rising. Not draped in logos, not guarded by velvet ropes, not soaked in elitism or obscured behind a madam will be contacted when she's worthy attitude. No, the next wave of luxury is clear-eyed, conscious, and, most of all, transparent. Because now, luxury isn't about who can afford to overpay. It's about who knows better. It's about knowing where your leather came from, who stitched your seams, and whether that $4,000 markup actually adds any value to your life. It's about choosing craft over clout and truth over tradition. And let's be honest, the brands are terrified. They built empires on illusion, on secrets, on making sure you never ask the wrong questions. But Gen Z, the TikTok generation, the ones raised with Google in one hand and a bullshit detector in the other, they're not buying the dream. They're dissecting it. Every viral expose, every what you're really paying for breakdown, every influencer willing to say, this looks better than a Birkin and cost me less than rent. That's a threat to the old guard. Because once you stop chasing the fantasy, you stop paying their price. You stop letting them control your worth. And that, right there, is the revolution. Because luxury has always been about power. The power to exclude. The power to exploit. The power to say, if you don't have this, you don't matter. But the next generation is flipping that script. They're saying, if your bag needs a logo to feel luxurious, it's not. If your brand relies on shame and secrecy to survive, it's over. If you can't tell me where it came from, who made it, and why it cost this much, I don't want it. That's the new luxury, being informed, being intentional, being in control. And maybe that's why you're suddenly seeing legacy brands panic buying DTC competitors, silencing whistleblowers, sending cease and desist to TikTokers, jacking up prices again to maintain the illusion of value. Because they know, if you ever really wake up, if enough of us stop chasing the cloud and start chasing the truth, it's game over. So here's the call out, the challenge, the quiet revolution. Next time you reach for that 4-figure handbag, ask yourself, are you buying beauty, craftsmanship, meaning, or are you just paying for permission to feel important? Because the next wave of luxury is coming, and it won't ask for permission. It won't beg for access. It won't need a logo to feel powerful. It will stand on truth. It will speak with clarity, and it will say, we're done buying the dream. We want the reality. And that's what they never wanted you to know. So stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, the most expensive thing you can own is ignorance.